YouTube Tuesday from Barnabas Junction, brought to you in association with the Model Railway YouTube Community Group, MRYCG, connecting the Model Railway community together. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube. Just search for MRYCG. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of YouTube Tuesday. Straight away there, thank you very much, Owens Model Railways, for a super chat. Highly appreciated for that lovely donation. Go towards future prizes for the competitions here on YouTube Tuesday with Barnabas Junction. Cheers, matey. Also, we're going to get on with I need a big shout out to New Durham Junction for coming back on as a member of the channel supporter, and also the person who's going to be our very first shout out right here at the beginning of the show. But before we do, I need to talk. Thank again the channel members that support the channel. Each month they've donated a sum of money on as a donation towards the supporting of this channel, towards the prizes for you guys running competitions. And those guys are Human City, The Train Freak, Building the ELR Step by Step, Mike Pringle, Simon Trains MRS, Owens Model Railways, Leicester Station and TMD, and the Taff Valley Railway with Dave Williams, and Flint Hills Model Railway, Jeff Hammond, and finally Donegal Dad. The last three joining last week. Thank you very much indeed. It's highly appreciated of you to join the channel as a channel member, and it's highly appreciated for the donations to go towards future competitions here. And I'm going to be telling you about well, first of all, don't forget, have you entered into the competition? Thinking of that, have you actually entered the competition yet that we launched last week with episode 1? I'd also like to congratulate Containerman 68. He's just joined as a channel member on level 2 as a brakeman, and does a lot of braking in his truck, I do believe. Thank you very much, Containerman. That's highly appreciated of you and very generous. So yeah, we've got a competition on the show. Have you got your entry in? I hope you have. don't forget, if you want to know how to enter, but I'm still going to tell you now, all you have to do is go back to episode 1 of series 3 that we launched last week. And in the comment section, you've got to comment in there with I am in and the gauge that you model in to be entered into the giveaway, which is, and I forgot to mention it last week, that is going to be drawn live on episode 4 on the 20th of October. So I'll be drawing that live. The competition closes at 1 p.m. on the 20th, so 7 hours before the show, to give me a chance to get all the numbers and figures together. And I will be drawing that live here on the show on episode 4. Right. So who we got? The 40 of you already. So we've got Simon Model Trains, who used to be West Coast Model Railways. David Cook, the wife's in. Good evening. Thank you, wife, for joining me. Barnabas Junction, Carl. Who else have we got in here? Steve Harper, thank you for joining. Chelmsford Junction, Peter, thank you for joining us. Chasco's in the house. Steve Childers is in the house. Thank you. Pork Chop Express, you're in the house too. Roxham Junction, good evening, Jason. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to you, Roxham. Who else have we got in the house? Also, King Fox Junction, Pennington TMD, welcome to the stream. Andrew Sartorius, Train Freaks in. Chester Line, hello. Thank you for joining us this evening. Chris of Hales Heritage, he's in. March West Junction's in the house. Who else have we got in the house? Anthony Judge, the Model Train Outsider, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tim JD is in. Good evening to you. Jacob's Railways, good evening to you. I believe, is that Jacob? Jacob, we saw, I captured in a photograph, I think it was the other day. Who else have we got in? Hollybrook Junction, Al from Anglesey is in the house. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. Matthew Whitmore from Warwick is in the house. Good evening to you too. I'm not catching up what people are saying, so apologies for that. Paul Cynic, welcome. Thank you very much also for joining the channel as a channel member. He's joined at a level 3. He's an engineer, so we'll be going for him for some engineering work if we get a problem with our trains. Who else? We've got James Williams. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining us. Andrew Chesterton's in the house also. I'm catching up with the chat now. Right, I've caught up with you all. Thank you very much for all of you for coming in as channel memberships. Remember, all the funding, once it's released by YouTube, that comes from the channel memberships and any super chats will be clubbed together once YouTube have taken their cut. And when I get the chance to see how much it is, I will then put that towards future prizes here for competitions on this YouTube Tuesday channel show. So first of all, I'm going to get straight in. I have mentioned it, and he's become a channel member. Our first shout out for this evening is actually a chap that became a channel member before we'd even gone live. So huge thank you to the Growler Blackwood N-Gauge Model Railway. I'm just going to bring up your information because I have looked at it already. And I've just had a notification that Owens Model Railways has got his entry in for the competition. So, and Steve Harper and the Train Freak is ensuring they've got their entries in. Bear in mind, 1 entry per person. So you've got to think which model you want to enter for. The price is the same anyway, so you can enter for either one. It doesn't really matter. So we want the Blackwood Growler. Here we go. So the Growler Blackwood N-Gauge Model Railway. Let's check his about channel out. Yes, he's a good man. He's filled his about channel. So let's get a brief outline of what he's about. And welcome to the channel where you'll find videos documenting the building of my N-Gauge layout, Blackwood. The layout was started back in 2008, so it's been going some time now, 12 years, and it's never technically been finished. Well, what layout is ever finished? What layout? Yeah, and in fact, his next line is what layout ever is. The videos start with the rebuilding of one side of the layout. This is followed by the second side and now the front board. The station on it, thanks to everyone who has commented and subscribed to the channel. You can get in touch with him, Ewan Chambers at blueyonder.co.uk. His information is there available in the About section of his channel if you want to check him out and have a read of that himself. So thank you, Ewan, for jumping on board as a channel member. Your money will go towards, your donation will go towards a prize for future competitions. Thank you so much. So he's got some great stuff on. Obviously, I'm not an engager, but I still support anyone that models in any gauge whatsoever. He recently put out his October update 1 day ago, and he's having a good look at what he's been getting up to since his last one. It's a lovely layout. You wouldn't actually, just looking at the thumbnails, you wouldn't actually think it's an N gauge. You'd think it's a really, really highly detailed 00 gauge, to be honest. Lots and lots of track work, which is great for an industrial scene. So I have seen much of his layout on his videos over the past. So make sure you do subscribe. Now, when I clocked on here, he was on 983 subscribers. I know the subscribers mean nothing, but it would be great if we can get into his 1,000 subscriber mark, because then he'll be able to do his live streaming. So come on, let's get him up to his thousands. So he needs 16 of you. So come on, guys, subscribe. 987 already growing. I'll keep an eye on that. Now, for those that you would have seen in the thumbnail just at the beginning, this episode is going to be all about scale and gauges. Do you know your differences between your scale and gauge? And what are the different ones that are available throughout the model railway market? Now, I have got a chap that's going to be joining me live here in the stream, and in my opinion is highly knowledgeable. He's asked me not to say experienced, but he is highly knowledgeable on this subject. And I think he's probably, for me, he's given me a lot of insights into a lot of knowledge I never knew about. Me, I'm 00 gauge. Really, I should have gone N gauge, but my fingers are too big for N gauge. But I'm 00 gauge. Now, there's a first question. So in a moment, we're going to be bringing in our guest to tell us all a bit about scales and gauges. So we'll just have a look quickly at his subscriber count. He's at 989. So we'll be checking out the growler, seeing how he's getting on with his subscribers. I know he has been in the chat. He was in at the beginning. So please, I'd like to introduce to you our guest for this evening to talk about scales and gauges is Mr. James Cullen, aka James DEMU. So good evening, hello. James. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
He did say moments before he came on the stream.
I can hear you okay.
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much, James, for joining us. Brilliant. Now, I'm going to fire straight on with the question that I was just coming up to before I brought you on the stream. And I mentioned I'm 00 gauge, but shouldn't I be 00 scale?
Yes.
So why am I 00 gauge? That's the question.
And the reason sit down, everybody. This is going to get really exciting. The reason is there is no such thing as 00 scale. Which I'm start with the basics. The whole world around you, everything we see, the people, cars, trees, planes, houses, everything is to scale. The gauge only refers to the track itself.
Yeah, because we in 00 gauge, we're 4 mil. Is that correct?
It is, and it's not.
Right.
This is. I've actually got a list next to me as my notes of nearly 25 different scales and gauges to reference.
Right. Okay.
So for 4mm, what we call 4mm scale, that would be 1/76th. So that can be 00, EM, P4, 009. I've got some others as well. ON30 comes in at 1/48. Sorry, that's the wrong one. There's various ones there. I've deliberately omitted most of the American ones because they get really complicated. So with 4mm, that is 4mm to the foot. So on your model, in the real world, it's 1 foot, 32.5 centimeters, I think it is, would be just 1. So that's how we scale it down or up.
Okay.
The track gauge is where people get a little bit confused. The track gauge for 00, 4mm 00, is 16.5 millimeters, which is actually narrow gauge. Because
Right.
the true, yes, this is the thing. The true track gauge for 00, for 4mm, sorry, should be 18.83, which is actually P4, Proto 4, which is why it exists.
Right.
If you're not going to be so precise as doing P4, you can do EM, which is 18mm, which stands for EM, 18 mil. See, I'll go in steady. I'm sorry, everybody in the comments is going, "What is this bloke on about?" Basically, because the width of the rails in 4mm scale should be 18.83 millimeters apart.
Okay.
That's how far apart your wheels should be on all your trains.
Right. But we roughly, is that the back to back, or is that the actual wheels?
That's that rails itself. So you're back to back.
Yeah, so rail to rail. Yeah.
Railhead. Yeah, railhead. But 00 gauge track is actually 16.5 millimeters apart. So
Right.
it's narrow gauge.
Right.
So it's not the full width as it would be in real life.
Okay.
Which is why I say, so you've got 009, which is 4mm scale, because it is. But 009 is 9mm wide track, which is N gauge track.
Right.
So when you get into things like narrow gauge, this is where it gets a little bit confusing for some people. Owens Model Railways is getting this just. If I look down the list here, GN15 is G scale narrow gauge. Now that uses 16.5mm track, 00 gauge track, but it represents 15-inch gauge rail.
Okay.
So if you wanted to model a 15-inch gauge railway, you'd probably use GN15. If you wanted to model something different, like, where are we here, 2'6" gauge, narrow gauge, again 16.5mm track, 00 gauge track, but to make 2'6" gauge track, we'd use ON30, which is 1/48 scale, as opposed to 1/76 scale of 00.
Right.
So the people and figures get bigger, but the track that's how you do it, basically. Does that make sense, everybody in the comments?
Right. But what caused the incorrect scaling then against the gauge here in the UK, at least?
Right. I shall try and be sort of succinct with this. You have to go back to the start of model railways, and you had gauges 3, 2, 1, and 0,
which is O gauge,
which is now called O gauge.
Yeah.
And basically, they are divisible by each other.
Yes,
that makes sense. So you work down. So gauge 2, which doesn't exist anymore. Basically, gauge 3 is 3-inch. Gauge 2 is 1/22.5, which is what it was when it was first came up with in 1891. It goes back a bit. But in 1909, they changed it to 2-inch gauge, which changed the scale slightly, which is why eventually it fell out of fashion and people stopped using it. Gauge 1 is 1/32, and then O gauge, depending on where you are in the world, is either 1/48, 1/45, or 1/43.5. This is where people get confused with the whole issue. In Britain and France, it's 1/43.5. If you are in Germany, in Japan, or in Russia, it's 1/45, and if you're in America, it's 1/48. This, I believe, the reason is because those countries all use different track gauges. Most of them do anyway.
In the real world, the different countries do use different track gauges anyway. Yeah. So they've kept it a different modelling scale. They've followed it through. Obviously, if some countries you'll find they have transition areas where one country is in different scale, but they've got transport going from that country to another country. So they have a transitional section where they transport from one rolling stock to the other because of
this happens in Spain.
Right.
And what they actually do, is they lift the whole train up and chains out.
Oh, right.
That's how they do it.
Yeah, it's a quick and simpler way.
You can experience this. Yeah. Yeah, they do a bogie swap live there in front of you. You get off the train, they pick it up, swap the bogies, and then you continue on.
Now, I did not know that. So thank you for that informative information. Now, the guys in the chat,
No, it's
they've all been talking about what they're hearing in, and I believe Chris Bauer's in there under the pseudonym channel.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've not read much what's going on, so I don't know what he's talking about at the moment. Probably just a load of rubbish. Gauge doesn't really matter when Thomas ended up getting blended into bits by the mower, does it, James?
It wasn't a mower, it was my fan, and you broke it.
So, just obviously, the guys that are in the chat, they're obviously going to be wanting to ask some questions. Now, Owen's saying he's kind of following it. Now,
Great.
what do you now? I know that you've been struggling with scale and gauge yourself at the moment. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. Some people may know I recently started another N-gauge build. It's a micro layout, and it's based on a rather large diesel shed in the East Midlands. The problem I had was N-gauge comes in 3 different sizes. So in the United Kingdom, for anyone that does N-gauge, you'll know it's 1 to 148th, which is N-gauge models over here. If you're in America or in the continent, it's 1 to 160. My problem was
in America, it's N scale though, is it? Not N-gauge.
Yes, well, that's how they referred to it.
Yeah.
The issue I had was I was making up drawings of a real building, and I overthought it, and I did it in 2mm scale. Now, 2mm scale is 1 to 152nd, not 1 to 148th.
So you're a little bit out.
So my buildings, when I first built them, were all a little bit out, and I couldn't work out why it wouldn't fit right and why things didn't look right.
Right.
So I had to go back and redraw and rebuild everything to British N-gauge, 1/148th. And this is partly where some people have issues with their models when you start to mix and combine scales and numbers without realizing you're doing it. You see people buying continental figures, for example. You get German cars and people, and they are HO, not 00. Now, HO is 3.5mm to the foot. 00 is 4mm to the foot.
Yes.
There is a loophole. There is a loophole.
And I know
it depends on the period. Yeah, I don't wish to go off on a tangent too far away. But for example, on the Tinsley layout, which you know I'm associated with as well, Dave's big Tinsley in the loft, there are various figures on there. And people in the real world are not all the same height. So if you buy some Bachmann figures as an example, they'll all be approximately 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you want to have a team of working together all 6 foot. Yeah, a team of yous. But some people are shorter. So an HO scale person actually comes in about 5.5 feet high, which you'd think would be short. But you go up and down the high street with your mask on and look at people. Some people are that short.
Yeah.
Some people are shorter, some are taller.
It goes on the same theory on trees. Everyone tries to scale trees on their model railways the same. But trees are all different shapes and sizes. So it doesn't matter whether you get small trees, big trees, giant trees, or tiny trees.
The problem people tend to have, without wanting to go into trees too much, is perspective.
Yeah.
You and I walking around see trees from below. You look up at a tree. On a model, you look down on it.
Yes.
And so this is the problem where if you actually get yourself down at baseboard height and look up at what you've built, you'll probably find most of your trees are very, very small indeed. Again, if you scale them, a fully grown oak tree can be over a foot high. Like maybe 2 feet high in 00. They're a big tree. But if you have a model railway and you put a 2 foot high tree in the middle of it, someone will walk in and go, "Oh, that's O gauge." 7mm scale, and it's not. And this is where it can become a little bit confusing.
I've just seen
I've just seen Lego Trains in the comments. To cut you off, Lego Trains is its own separate scale and gauge, and I've not wrote it down because Lego has different sizes in terms of the width of the brick build.
I'm trying my best to keep up with the chat. The chat is extremely busy, and I'm struggling to keep up. I just captured Keith of Humanity Junction. He stated, why does he keep saying gauge when talking about the scale of things? Again,
because I've
beginning.
Yeah, I fall back into the trap myself. You become used to referring to everything sort of mixed and matched. So I apologise for that. That's me getting it wrong.
I think that's the difference between to me, I would refer HO as scale and double O as gauge, because that's what we generally do over here. Everything's branded 176 scale, double O gauge on packaging.
Yeah,
so
176 is scale.
Yeah, if you go over to the States or Canada or even European countries, you'll see it's a HO scale 187.
Yes. 3.5 millimeters to the foot, correct.
Exactly. So they don't say gauge. They never say gauge.
No, because HO
is scaled.
Yeah, HO, when representing 3.5 millimeter, is standard gauge, 4 foot 8.5. Double O, standard gauge, like I said before, should be 18.83. But the track they use is basically HO track, so it becomes 16.5. So it is technically narrow gauge. So that's why you don't have double O scale track unless you're doing EM or P4.
Owen's just said in the chat, double O gauge figures 6 foot, HO figures 5'5". So I'm somewhere in the middle.
Exactly.
So you just
exactly
there, I think. So the train freak saying, we only say gauge if we are talking about track, standard versus narrow. So because obviously they're talking about the mill between the track, which is the gauge.
That's it.
It still goes down to the fact we should really say double O scale.
Yeah, that's it.
Everything's modeled in
26,
which is the double O scale.
That's it.
But we always refer with our modeling scale as the track width.
This comes back to the original 3210 scales. Because you had 0 and then you have half 0, which is HO. O is 7 millimeter, HO is 3.5 millimeter.
Yes. So
now this is
where did double O come from then?
Well, OO is same as Z and ZZ. You have Z gauge, which is 1/220, and ZZ is 1/300.
From my recollection, and this is not I wouldn't say research, and I can't say it's concrete in evidence. Was it the predecessors of Hornby that actually created double O as the toy train?
You're on about Rovex.
I think it was Rovex. They created a toy train in this particular size.
Yes,
and it blossomed from there, and it became that popular. It was too late to reconfigure and change to the correct gauge of HO.
Yes, it's something along those lines. You've got this sort of weird thing in history where things happening in Europe were happening at the same time in America, but the two never sort of met because we didn't have the internet then and people weren't talking and that. So what they were developing over there and over here and on the continent were all happening sort of in line, but they weren't necessarily working with each other and copying each other. They were just kind of coming up with their own bits and things. So we've had the 3210 and then that division. Rovex came along in the 1950s, I think it was, with their plastic injection formed engines and coaches, which went on the 16.5 millimeter track, which you could buy as a set. I think it was for Christmas or something like this. And it was popular. Just after that came out, Triang turned up with their set, which was 3 millimeter TT,
right? Which
they marketed as the tabletop railway.
So that's where TT. Right, I didn't know that. It's something else. This is why I got you in here, James, because I've always wanted to discuss this as a subject on the show, and I knew you were
And now you're regretting it, I know.
Yeah, I highly recommend, if you want to know anything about UK scale and gauges, speak to James. He is obviously.
Leslie's actually, I've just glanced at the comment. Sorry, Leslie just mentioned about the 00 needed due to the motor thing. I have heard that said myself, that Frank Hornby had an issue getting the body sizes right for the motors available, because British locos are smaller than continental locos, so it was easier to make the bodies bigger. That may be correct. I used to sort of follow that myself and then it became difficult to find where in history that's written down as definitive, where it came from, the source of that. But it does pan out that it was just easier to make the bodies bigger than make the track wider as well.
Anthony Dodge, actually, the model train outsider, he's just put in the chat, actually. He says 00 and HO were created about the same time, but the HO gauge track was already, as you said, spread everywhere. So the inventor of the 00, rather than concede to produce as HO, used the HO track, but kept the scale of his models.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah, but along those lines,
yeah.
The reason I didn't bring that up as the definitive, that's why, was because I hadn't found the exact moment in history when that was the decision made and the person who did it. So that was all, rather than sort of, I don't want to speculate and then people go, oh, that's it then, and away we go. And potentially a myth is perpetuated.
There's a comment, actually, from the Heritage line. Now, he's just posted something interesting that I never knew, and I don't know myself. He's just said, N gauge used to be 000.
It did, yes. Lone Star had 000.
For 9mm between the rails. That's what the N stands for.
That's
right. This is why it's great to have so many people that are knowledgeable in this hobby amongst this community, because this is information that I know nothing about model railways.
Yeah. Well, you do a little bit. Timber Surf made an interesting thing. TT is still made, and actually is still made in the UK as well. There's a lot of continental 3mm, which is brilliant stuff. And it's also really cheap. If anybody's going to start again in the hobby, go and do 3mm, because you can buy some fantastic models from like Hungary. Yeah. Which is a bit out there, but and they're brilliant, and they're so cheap compared to what we have in 00 and in N-gauge. And because you've got the 3mm Society, you can get all the kits and bits and some pre-built to make your British layouts. So worth looking into. Also, if anybody's fancying just doing a small project on the side to get a bit, I remember you talking, I think it was last night, about the block. Do something else, go away from it for a bit. Try something smaller, different scale. Have a play with, well, this thing, I'm about to say, have a play with 3mm. 3mm is 1 to 101.6. TT is 1 to 120. So pick which one of those two you like and go with that.
Funny you should mention TT there, actually. Timber Surf has just said TT should never have been lost by manufacturers. It was the best compromise between 00 and N.
Oh, it's brilliant. It is brilliant. If anybody hasn't actually encountered 3mm models, who's watching this now or watching this back, there's quite a few videos on YouTube and around. Go and look them up, or just look up the 3mm Society and see what they do. You'd be amazed at what can be done. Jason, you said you didn't do N-gauge because your fingers weren't N-gauge friendly at the start. The issue with 4mm is the amount of space it requires in the average home. 3mm is the perfect compromise.
Now, I remember when we were at Stafford, you introduced me to the chap at the 3mm Society. Robin,
yes.
Yes, that's it. I couldn't remember his name, Robin. And it was an interesting talk, actually, is what he introduced me to and showed me. And it's a lot of information that I would have never have known without having that chat with him. So I thank you for introducing me to him. It was an interesting chat. If anybody is out and about, actually, anywhere, I doubt it very much they are. But so go check out the 3mm Society online, because there's no exhibitions taking place anymore.
That's true.
For the foreseeable future. Talking in that, another one's been cancelled. The Epsom exhibition in April next year has now been cancelled. So just carrying on through the chat. If anybody's got any questions, please put in the chat. Ask James. Any questions directly for James that you would like to answer for you? If you've got any queries on anything. I'm just catching up. CSX Rensville. After the Second World War, we didn't want to import motors from Germany, the leading manufacturers of electric motors. Now, I've heard that story before. So
yes.
What is it? Is there credible evidence on that?
Probably somewhere. I just haven't found it. That's all. A lot of my, you called it knowledge, my useless trivia, has been sort of gained over years of doing exhibitions and different shows and this sort of thing, and just talking with people and listening to people. Spending a lot of, this is a great thing actually, for people who are watching and in the chat and this sort of thing. If you're not a member of a club or a society, that's fine. You don't have to be to enjoy this hobby. But when you go to an exhibition, when they're happening again, you see it a lot. There's always societies and groups at shows. A lot of people tend to walk past them because they think it's sort of members only. They're not. They're there actually to promote themselves and try and sort of gain new membership and get people interested and sort of share a bit of knowledge. Spend 5 minutes, have a sit down, take the seat, have the chat, talk to the person who is on the stand. And go from there. I've just seen a comment. 3mm is not T gauge. T gauge is 1/480th or 1/450th.
Right.
Which is a whole. Which actually stands for 3mm between the track. So it is 3mm gauge.
Yeah.
1/450th, 1/480th scale.
Right.
So even people in the comments, they're starting to get this. People are getting this. It just gets a bit confusing.
Oh, it's just modern railways.
Yeah, but yes, when you go back to shows.
I've just seen a comment actually. Timber Surf actually saying someone does a narrow gauge loco kit for TT. Be interesting if you can find some information on that, Timber, and send that through.
Okay. So are you saying then that is a loco kit that sits on a TT chassis?
I'm sure.
So the question is, how big is the body? Because if the body is in, for example, 4mm, then that's like a broad gauge narrow track, quite a broad narrow gauge track. If the body was in 7mm, then that would be representing quite almost, what would it be? Almost 1 foot narrow gauge, which would be really narrow. So this is where it all comes in. You see, you can actually represent various gauges by just changing the track out and keeping the scale you're in. There is one we haven't mentioned yet, which I've kind of saved back a little bit. And this is something that it comes to that again of mixing scale and gauge. Some people on their layouts, when looking for vehicles and figures and this sort of thing, opt to use the old Matchbox cars. Yes. Which is okay if you want to put Matchbox cars on your model railway. But Matchbox cars are 1/64th approximately, which is S. Now S actually was invented in Britain. It was over here. It's one of the early ones.
Really
very early on actually. Yes. S became very popular. And it was used by many people, and it ended up going to America. And the Americans still have it, still use it as 1/64th scale. Yes, they produce S scale trains.
Well, that'll be interesting.
You can put your Hot Wheels and your Matchbox with them because they are the same scale, and that represents 4 foot 8.5 inch gauge.
There's actually quite a few from over the pond here in the chat at the moment. The likes of Container, the Train Freak, and Humanity Junction. They're all from over the ponds. I know Container Man, he travels all around the States and Canada area if he's able to go over the border. And I would be interested if any of you guys have come across then S scale or S gauge. S scale then. That's what
we've got to educate ourselves. We've got to get into that saying scale, not gauge. That's the problem.
Container Man actually put Australia has S scale.
Ah.
That's an
So I'm
interesting
assuming
thing.
that would be this. I'm assuming that would be representing the standard gauge.
Right. Emo
With the
8765's in the house. Good evening to you, Dave. Traitors Gate, evening, Jason. He's saying sorry he's late. No, you're never late to the party. Always welcome anytime, Traitors Gate. Ray Balbal, he's just posted in. Yes, the American flyer that's now built by Lionel.
Yeah, that makes sense because the company in America that made S scale trains went bust, and Lionel bought them, their tooling, and their track. And what they actually did was they took their O gauge track and regauged it to put in their S scale sets because they went out.
Really? Apparently, Leslie Gilbert says S is actually popular, very popular.
Yeah,
That's
and it makes sense again because it sits between O and O. In the same way that HO sits in between again, it's that wonderful thing where if you actually set everything out in a line, you have this beautiful sort of smooth curve that picks up from T all the way up to full size. And S is right there between those two. And yeah, it's just another one, to look out for.
Tim Search just put in. I'm going to try and pronounce it. Hagen 37700 is narrow gauge railway.
Okay.
Ray Bell's just put AC Gilbert. I presume he means that's also S gauge. Timber Surf says that's Alban is 4.7 millimeter gauge.
Okay.
6 Rensville, seen an exhibition layout in S scale, but can't remember the name. Right, so AC Gilbert with S scale. Okay. Very interesting. It's interesting to get your views from over the pond.
Yeah, I've just seen Ronald's comment about Oxford. Oxford die-cast cars are the end ones, the 2 millimeter ones are 1 to 148th. So they are N gauge, not N scale, which is where it gets confusing. And their 00 ones are actually 00. So they're technically narrow gauge cars as well, because if you put them up against drawings a real thing, some of the proportions are a little bit off, a bit chunky. But they are correct as far as the actual size for the people. It gets a bit messy with cars because unless you're making them out of plastic and this sort of thing, and everything is nice and thin and how it should be, they get a bit off. But they're basically right. Without being too picky, Oxford cars they're okay. But obviously, if you're going to do 4 millimeter, you want Oxford cars. If you're doing 3.5 millimeter HO, you require some of your Continental cars. And apparently now on my own. Oh, okay, that was different. So I don't know what to do now because I've got no Jason. So we'll just carry on, I think. Someone wants, Train Fleet wants 3.5-inch gauge. It exists. It's real. It's in your garden. It's the big stuff. And I believe it's quite expensive, but you make it all yourself and you crack on and it's good to go. Welcome back to your own channel.
That's my mouse button by mistake and drop myself out. Yeah, just going actually on about cars then. I've just brought
Human City. Yes, I do. There is a channel that I occasionally put things onto. It's great if you can't sleep. Cars.
Yes. Asking, yes, James DMU have a channel. Yes, that's his channel name, James DEMU. If anyone would like, if one of my moderators would actually like to post his channel link in, that would be a great help. Now, going on to cars, you were mentioning about different scales of cars. Now, I've got a varied amount of different cars, and I've noticed a lot of stuff, model cars out there that are promoted or advertised as being 00 gauge, not 00 scale, 00 gauge cars.
Yes, that'll make them narrow gauge cars.
That's a lovely car, that is, and I've bought it. And then I've gone and put them together on the layout. And I'm thinking, why does that car look like at least a third bigger than the other one?
Don't forget, in the real world, excluding all the new makes, which are all exactly the same car made in the same plastic jelly mold, and they're all a bit naff and horrible. Proper cars from the 70s and 80s are all different sizes. And that said, a car from the 70s For example, a Ford Cortina, which was a fairly big car back in the 70s and 80s, compared to the likes of an Austin or a Mini, from Leyland, this sort of thing. Today is a very small car. In fact, a Ford Cortina today is smaller than a Fiat 500.
Right.
Get your head round that one.
I've just got some examples here now. I've got, let me just see what this is. I've got a Vauxhall Vectra.
Oh dear.
Yeah, oh dear. On a P plate.
Sorry.
And I've got a Volvo, I would, C70 on a private plate.
Now that's a Carorama one, isn't it? The Carorama ones are 187th.
So without
how sad I got that from without even looking. Yes.
Look at the scale difference. Oh, look at the scale difference between these two vehicles.
Yes, and the Carorama one, the one at the bottom, your gold Volvo, is actually smaller than your Vauxhall.
Yeah, that's
which is a bit of a worry because I didn't think the Volvos were that much bigger than a Vectra. Well, now you can work this to your advantage. Don't panic. Another tank carrying a broken Vauxhall on the roof rack. Yeah. The trick is, and again, have this with Dave, Emo8765, hello Dave, on his Tinsley layout. What we tend to do is with things like cars, and actually some wagons, there are some HO scale wagons on Tinsley, and we put them down the bottom of the yard. And the cars, your smaller cars, go at the back of the layout. So you end up with forced perspective.
Yeah.
So when you look along it, even though the vehicle is only 2 feet away, as an example, it looks like it's 10 feet away. Yes. And so you can actually make the scene seem deeper and wider than what it really is. Again, you can use HO scale figures to do this as well. On your model railways at home, you can put the smaller people at the back and your full-size 6-footers at the front. And when you look at the scene, they appear further down the street. So don't be put off if you have vehicles or figures that you think, oh, actually, that's not quite right. I don't think that's any good. You can still use them. And just to kind of touch on what I'd hinted at before we moved on, time period is also relevant. The average height of a man in Britain or Western Europe in the year 2000 is what I get right now, it's about 5'9.5", 5'10". That's right, nearly 6 foot. The average height of a man in Britain in 1950 was 5'7". So we're getting taller as a species. We're getting taller.
We're getting taller.
Yes.
So
a suit of armor of a knight, a suit of armor of a knight from the 18th century in Germany is on display. I've seen it. I forget where I was. And the guy was about 5'4". Knight in shining armor, midget. By today's standards.
Back in
if you are modeling,
tall man.
Yeah. So if you are modeling early Steve, if you're getting those new Hatton's lovely coaches that's coming out, which aren't as generic as people might think.
They're the Genesis ones.
Yes, the Genesis coaches I was told are supposed to be more generic than particular types, but I've been looking them up because I'm sad, and I found what they are. So I know the deliveries are wrong. Sorry, everybody. If you're modeling the 50s, for example, HO scale figures are okay because it means that person is just slightly under the average height.
Right.
And your 6 foot high backman man in 1950 is actually a bit of a giant. This is a tall fella.
Just going back to the gauges and scale.
I love Father Ted. Sorry, the comment in these are small, those are far away.
Trevor Dickinson saying Zed gauge is 1 in 450th. That is
that's T gauge.
Right,
that's T gauge is 1 in 450th. Z gauge is 1 220th, or 1 in 300. The ZZ.
Okay.
Yeah, so Z is 1 220. T is 1.
Right, Simon Model Trains actually asked, James, what is Zed Gauge? And Trevor Dickinson answered with Z Gauge is 1 in 450th. So he's actually said it's slightly out there. Not a problem.
Z is the one that is it's the one that's smaller than N before T became popular. It's mostly continental, and there is a little bit of British Z. So it's something you can look out for, but you're not going to do very much with it. The issue with Z is it's a little bit clunky because it's only a little bit smaller than N. And there's not a lot of support for it. There are examples of it. There actually is a Z layout at Peakorama.
Right.
So if anyone has been to Peakorama and seen the home of Pico and Will's ratio, in their permanent display, there's an American layout in a fish tank. That is the Z.
Right. Well, what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to quickly say again, anybody in the chat that wants to ask James any questions before we take a break from him, because I'm going to be doing another shout out in a moment and also show what's been going on behind here, which James will be able to continue. I'm going to drop him down into the basement in a moment. So any further questions to ask James while we take a couple of minutes break from, and then we'll bring him back.
No, time to go away. Okay.
Am I the Owens Motorways? Am I the only person who used to think that James DEMU stood for James Diesel Electric Multiple Unit? No, you're not, because I used to think that too until I knew it was about
Close.
Modelers United, Diesel Electric Modelers United. But
yes.
it's a bit of a coincidence. Yes. Actually, the same initials. Leslie Gilpin said, there's a guy doing an exhibition circuit with a fine scale T gauge layout with Midland Railway locos. What was that one
worth seeing?
Yes, that one about Father Ted. Why do you think of Father Ted? Oh, right. Yeah, perspective. Big cow, little cow. Big cow, little cow. Yes.
Yeah, it was. It's the one in the caravan, and he's explaining to Dougal that the small plastic cow is small, and the real ones out there are far away.
But the one in his hand looks bigger.
If anybody hasn't watched Father Ted, you really should. Yes, exactly. These are small; those are far away.
Trevor Dickinson,
the Train Freak. Most of them, I've got notes. I'm cheating, so don't worry. I don't know about any of them. I've just written it all down.
What scale gauge does James DMU not know about? Yeah. Trevor Dickinson, T-scale UK.
Do you know what?
Based in Scotland. Drink. Yeah.
Yes, this is true. They are, yes. Drink.
What? Hang on. That just takes me on to something I spotted earlier on. The fourth bridge model. What scale is that?
Yes. That is T 1/450th.
Right. I've seen that.
Would you like to know a dirty little secret about it? Because I have operated it at an exhibition. I was very lucky. He was next to DEMU, and he went for a cup of tea. I and Robin, who you mentioned earlier, whilst the gentleman who owns it went for a cup of tea, we measured it, and it's actually too short to scale. It's to the scale of 1 to 450. It is 1 foot too short.
Oh, really? So yeah,
that's how close he got it as a 3D print.
Oh, but without knowing that, without getting a tape measure out, no one would ever notice because it's impressive.
You'd never notice.
It's so impressive.
There's a reason for that story, and that the reason is that when you're building your models at home, don't get too caught up on the whole. Is it exactly right? Is it perfect? Because if it looks right, it is right. And that bridge looks spot on.
It looks fantastic. Incredible. It does. It's absolutely.
So, top tip. If it looks right, it is right.
Yes, stunning. Absolute stunning beyond the word.
I've got to say, Owen, we did tell him and he kind of knew.
And he was like, I've got it this far. I ain't taking it down now.
Yeah, basically, it's not worth reprinting the whole thing for something so.
Yeah.
It's human hair thickness we're talking here. It's
Yeah. So I'll drop you down short for a few minutes down into the basement, James. Don't go anywhere, and I'll be bringing you straight back. Thank you very much so far.
Okay, I'll be right here.
Thank you in a moment. So there we go. That's James with telling us of much about scale and gauge, a lot of the differences. But we're going to go straight on with shout out number 2. Now, I've got to remember which one this was. I'm sorry, I do remember it is, and I've just been informed that we've got numerous more entries into the contest. So I do believe that, because I've seen him mentioned in the chats, I do believe here. So shout out number 2 is going to be one that I was going to shout out last week, but due to timing, I ran out of time. So, and I'm going to need to come back to the growler as well. So for shout out number 2, this chap is currently on 675 subscribers. Bear in mind, when you do subscribe to a channel, whether it be from a shout out here on the channel, then make sure when you do subscribe, you click the bell, select all, so that you'll get the notifications from their channel, from all the notifications from their channel. And also, you must watch some of their videos. Preferably, it's good to watch 2 or 3, and also drop a comment in. Good comment to leave is you've been sent over to subscribe, courtesy here of Jason here at Barnabas Junction on the YouTube Tuesday show, which I know a lot of you did to last week's number 1 shout out, which was that absolutely incredible layout. And I've already forgotten what the channel name was, but we'll come back to that anyway. But straight on then with today's second shout out, and that is going to be, and I'm waiting for the link to appear. In the meantime, look what I've been doing. Something's missing in the background. Can you tell what's missing? Leave that one with you there. So the second shout out is Rule 1 Model Railways. Now he's on 675 subscribers. So like I said, when you do click subscribe, make sure you click the bell, select all, go and watch some of the videos after this. Comment on a couple of their videos. That will ensure YouTube don't kick you off their subscription list, because they don't allow people just to subscribe and just sit there. Someone have a link that Jason's first shout out. First shout out was a little earlier on, but I can get the moderators here in the channel to post continuous links. So there we go. Owen, thank you very much. Owen's Model Railways is posted in the current shout out, which is Rule 1 Model Railways. Currently sitting at 675 subscribers. I'm going to refresh that because you've only just got the link. And let's see if it's already increased, to see if some of you are out there searching. Now, we've got the link out there now. Did Carl Braun did see you working yesterday? That might be to, is that to me? But yeah, all right, already subbed, and there we go. The first one was the Growler Blackwood N-Gauge Model Railway. Thank you very much, Owen, for reposting the first one. So if you haven't subscribed, let's go. Oh, he's already shot up a couple there. He's gone to 277. Let's have a look. He's got a about section filled out. So hello, welcome to Rule 1 Model Railway, where all modelling is good modelling. Top tip, guys. Excellent wording there. We feature all sorts of railway modelling videos, interviews with layout owners, and other interesting archived content. Now, he does post some really, really good, like I said, archived content. And I have had a lot of fun, a lot of entertainment watching some of the archive stuff that he has posted on his channel. It's also into model railways as well. So, yeah. Get this channel checked out. He says the main layout featured on his channel is my own Western Parkway. This is a 4-track mainline and branch line extension layout. The layout is computer automated, so only one operator is required. Fantastic. So yeah, check out the channel. Oh, I've come off it. Check out the channel. That was really good stuff. And he has actually recently put out a video a couple of weeks ago saying that he's now in complete automation of that layout. No user input even required now, so no operator required. Sit back and watch the trains do their business and enjoy them. Yeah, Real One Model Railway. Seen some clips on Jenny's channel. What we're looking at now, 680. Keep them coming. Some great videos to look out on. Really, if you're really into your automation and your electronics of model railways, then this is definitely a channel worth subscribing. Container Man saying there, already subbed to the first channel, the Growler. If not, then get subscribing to the second one. And he's just subbed to the second one. So thank you very much, Container Man. If you do like your automation of your model railways, because obviously whatever's over here in the UK can still be used over in States, Canada, wherever, Europe, Australia. We're all operating on the same standard. Near enough, anyway. Train Freak saying, I've got a video for the Growler going in the background so I can sub to it and YouTube not kicking me off. There you go. Shows Train Freak knows how it's to be done. Matthew Whitmore saying, I've got 190 subscribers. Well, while you're here, people will be subbing to you and you might get more. So he's on 680. Fantastic stuff. I'm just actually going to go back to the Growler because I want to see if he's hit his 1K mark. He's on 991, so he's 9 off his 1,000 mark. So well done to all of you for taking the opportunity to subscribe to that channel. Make sure you do go check out some of their videos and leave them a comment or two. Let them know that you've subscribed after hearing about a shout out to that channel here on the YouTube Tuesday with Barnabas Junction. So right, getting on then, I want to tell you quickly, and I'll go a bit more onto this after I brought James back. What is missing? In fact, let me move that. What's missing? You can see the rock face, not as big as it was. You can see it's all open here. That's because I'll turn this over all the way around now, and I'll move my bum out of the way. Oh, I'll be back. You see a big chunky piece of wood there. That's because the crossover section is missing. No, we don't see any DB Schenker locomotives. If they were, they'd be going down the loft hatch at speed. Hi, Jason and everyone. That's Arthur Humphreys. Good evening to you. So good evening to everyone. I know Brian Finneton's in the house. Finneton Central. Half of the layout, not half, but a quarter of the layout has been ripped out. As some of you may know, we used to have the upper level as well as the 3-track lower level that followed that blue line pretty much. Well, if you look closely at that blue line, see how it dipped there. Well, it turns out that I'd forgotten what I'd used originally to build that crossover. If I just turn that, you can see there's the end of the TMD. The boarding was jigsawed together. It was lots and lots of different pieces of wood, all bolted and screwed together, and then covered over with me matting. So you couldn't really see the state of the wood, but it's been in there well over, I'd say nearly 15 years. So it stood the test of time, but it was time to remove. It was one of the reasons why I was struggling to do running sessions, because certain locomotives, especially my Pendolinos, wouldn't run. As soon as they come off here, this end section here, there was a hump going up and onto the board. The boards were sagging because they weren't properly supported, and where it came up onto the other side, on the far side by the TMD, there was another hump. And what was happening, bogies, class 66s, Pendolinos, they were riding over the hump and just literally pivoting and derailing. So it made me cautious of running stuff. So it's been time to rip it all out. Fortunately, I actually had, I don't know if you can see, The bus wire is here. There's the bus wire that I fitted, but I actually never got round to connecting up. So that's the bus wire over there. I'd never connected it up. So I'll be getting the electronics done properly, getting some proper droppers in. Thankfully, a lot of the track was good quality nickel silver, so I will be reusing a lot of the track that was on there. A lot of it wasn't ballasted, but I will tell you this. This is how good my ballasting is. That's how solid my ballast was. Now that's actually two pieces of, is that nickel silver? Yeah, they're two perfectly good pieces of nickel silver track on there, so they're being saved. But that's how good the ballast is here on this layout. It's a bit patchy in places, just needs touching up. But this is the sections of track that were underneath the upper level. So thankfully, without damaging the track, I managed to lift it straight off in one full section, and I've actually got two pieces. So as you can see, the track still in good condition. So I will break off the ballast. I won't whack it like some modelers try and tell us to do. I will gently remove the ballast from the track work and be able to reuse it. I've got all the track. There's the couple of pieces which were damaged already, so unfortunately I have had to bin those. But I do have much of the original track work which I will be able to reuse in time. Now my ideas will be explained. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos coming out on this, so this is not going to be focused on this as such. I did do a live lesson yesterday of the beginning of it being ripped out. We started the live stream showing all this area over here literally getting ripped out. I've got the incline in already, so you can see the rock face lowers down thanks to some advice from some great modelers, so it's not going to get ripped out. The incline is beautifully done. That's all ready to go in. And it's been tested that the locomotives or DMUs that will be traveling up there get up there without a problem. So that's it. Stay with me, follow my progress on that on this channel. I'm probably thinking that this progress will be done via live stream chats and not just videos, because I can just sit back, get on with the job, and enjoy your company while I build. But primarily, there's going to be a section of boarding here with where these plug sockets are. Board will come out just where that bit there sticks out. I will be filling the in gap at the end of the TMD section, and then across the middle I'm thinking of putting a suspension bridge of some sort. So I'll be looking towards guys who specialize in making bridges on some advice. I know Ray Barwell and the bridge guys will be certainly there to assist on that. They've done some really good bridge work stuff, and anybody else that will, but that's probably looking at being one of the last things. Do you have track plans sorted? Yeah, they're up here, but it's simply going to be the original 3 track work lower levels. We're going to come along the front, and the back, the upper level track's going to obviously descend to pair up with the lower levels, and there'll be an interchange for the upper level track to merge into the main level, so I can actually then bring the trains off the upper level and into the lower level. So keep an eye on that on the main videos in the future. So yeah, it's all been going big and strong. Ray Barwell, looks like Barnabas Junction wants you to build him a bridge just like what you got. Yeah, bowstring bridge, I think. Double and single bridge. Yeah, it'll be two twin track bridges. I'll be scratch building it anyway. The viaduct in Lancaster over the River Loon on the West Coast Way line is quite spectacular to create in model form. Mine are in my self-said, yeah, as it is. Yes, Leslie, very therapeutic in cleaning the ballast off lifted up track. Right, so just checking now. What are we on? 110. So before I do, I need to come back. How did the growler do? Growler's on 992. Superb. Rule 1 is on 680. Well done indeed to you all. So right, so I think what we'll do is we'll bring James back for a little bit more chat on tonight's subject, which is gauge and scale. So welcome back, James.
Hello, and just like that, everybody's just left the channel.
So I hope you had plenty of spiders to feed Boris down in the basement.
Plenty of supplies. He's a bit aggressive, isn't he?
He is. He's not getting many visitors. So, yeah, so he's very hungry. He's not had many visitors. I've left him starving for a week, you see.
Telling me, look at
that. Oh, he's bit your fingers off. If you had to pick between the three of them, I would probably go with JD. I don't know what that's like. You in more so in N-Track. Jason, I wouldn't trust the bridge guys to build a bridge with my trains going across it. Oh dear. Oh dear, Ray. Container man saying your bridges are not very good. So what do you think, James? What are my plans then?
I have 3 notes I made as you were talking and describing what you've been doing to your layout, and I had an extra thought on the scale and gauge thing. I was sort of reading some of the comments as I was making notes. I had that thought that you have for 00 code 100, code 75, yes. Code 83 American. In N we have code 80, code 55, and code 40. And these are all different heights of rail. Which ones are correct? Is your actual rail too chunky?
Interesting stuff, actually.
Not getting into that right now, but it's just that something that had that thought that how precise do we want to be with all this?
Look, I'll put a question out to the listeners, the watchers, actually. It'd be in those of you over the pond in the European countries and obviously down under. If you're those of you who are listening here tonight, what code of track do you use generally for your scale gauge? Let us know. So tell us, what scale do you model in, and what type of coded track do you use? Be interesting.
Does it matter what code you use for what gauge you're using? Because if you think about it, code 100 00 scale might be a bit chunky, but code 100 used for ON30, which would be O scale, 7mm scale, will probably look about right. So I wonder if there's a bit of that going on.
Lines is putting it. He's in N gauge, uses code 80 and 55. Used the same rail, just code 55 in embedded more into.
Aware of that. It's the visible rail I'm talking about. Because on the wheel railway, the rail sits on top of the chair or on the pandrol clip on top of the sleeper.
Yeah.
So it's just the visible rail. How much can you see? And yes, at the Growl at Blackwood. Oh, by the way, I've been subscribed to for a very long time and always enjoy his videos. Yeah, I believe that code 40 is actually the 2mm scale track, which is why it looks very fine and so forth, and it is rather nice. Again, if anybody hasn't seen it, look it up because it's nice stuff.
Leslie Gilpin saying N scale using Pico code 55, though it is nothing like a prototypical rail cross section.
Correct. Because Steve the actual rail sinks into the sleepers, as was mentioned a minute ago.
Steve Childers saying, I use code 100, but 83 is much more accurate for HO.
Yes. There's a gentleman who used to work for Pico, I forget his name now, who actually devised it in model form because he models American railways. And so he came up with the drawings, and Pico agreed to make it for him, and then they just produced it. The same as Pico actually do produce P4 track. If you want proper width, proper gauge track for your 4mm models, they do make it, but only for the society.
CSX Rensville's just put, I use code 83, but you could use 70 for the lighter rail.
That's what I've not become aware of. Code 70. So is that like an Atlas manufactured American product? Because I don't believe we have code 70 on the books over here in Europe. But again, that's the point: lighter rail, heavier rail, which you do have in the real world.
Yes, indeed, you do. The chat's going up that fast. I've come over here to. Code 75 is too short for him to use on his older locomotives.
This is out of flange size. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone who's got older stock knows about pizza cutter wheels.
Yeah, because pizza cutter wheels a lot. So those that you do, the people out there that model with the smaller coded track, obviously the older stock produced by the majority of the manufacturers were produced with big wheels, large flanges,
correct,
to ensure better running on the larger, really generic code 100 track.
Leslie's made an interesting comment, which I want to come back to in a minute, about sleeper spacing.
Yes, and I've just seen the guy that's just come into the chat who would be superb to tell the guys all about his quest on sleeper spacing.
There's a dirty little secret about sleeper spacing. I hope you're all sitting down and ready. For the people who have sat down and have respaced their sleepers, and I have done it. I did a piece of demonstration track for the society maybe about 10 years ago. And I had a gentleman get rather irate at Nottingham Exhibition because he didn't believe me that it was actually Pico Code 100 respace. He thought it was some fine scale track, and I wouldn't tell him who made it. There is no standard sleeper spacing. It doesn't exist. Forget about it. You cannot, and no one can tell you that is how far apart they should be. It depends on who laid the track, where it's laid, when it was laid, and many other variables.
Because it could also depend on what's underneath the track generically as well, because if it's got a poor, a not so good surface, the sleepers will need to be a little bit closer together than in wide open areas. Now, I can vouch for that because I was looking at the track work. Where was I recently? It was at Basford Sidings. Now, I was analysing some of the track work there and the sleepers. And in certain areas, the sleepers on the track work were really close together. But then you'd look a few meters away and the sleepers were wide apart.
York Station is like that. Yeah.
As you say, there is no set gap for sleeper space. It's complete varied across it all. And obviously you've got the difference between concrete sleeper and your wooden sleepers. So you'd have a different variant there as well.
Oh, actually, you got metal sleepers, and there's a brand new one for everybody, which isn't yet modelled, although it is modelled. And I saw this on the back of a van last week. They are now making railway sleepers out of recycled plastic.
Really? Oh, that's a good idea.
They are black and just, well, they look like pieces of Kit Kat, but they're completely black and made of plastic. So
excellent stuff.
We've already got plastic sleepers on our train sets, so we're already in front of the real thing.
Well, actually, we're prototypical before the real world.
Exactly. Life imitates art. That's what they say.
Yes.
But yes, so another one to look out for in the future. In model form. Yes, I'm aware that Richard Everard has respaced every single sleeper. And the answer is, everybody, if you're doing a Rule 1 model railway, if you're doing a Barnabas Junction, for example, where you are making your own railway based on your own ideas, and it's loosely based on a real location, but it's not a real location, you can have it however you like. And whatever if it looks right, it is right. Be happy. if you're modeling a real location, for example, if you were doing, well, let's say Crewe, you're going to do Crewe diesel depot, pop down there with your camera, take some photos, look at the track, model what you see. That's it.
And it'll
because
be totally variance. It'll be from one photograph to another, it will look totally different.
Yeah. Strapline made an thing about mixing as well. I've got plenty of photographs of short sections of concrete sleeper in between wooden points. And then long lengths of wood with a little bit of concrete. And again, things change over time. When it was still British Railways, they didn't bother about replacing the entire track panel because they weren't track panels. It was there was a mix of welded and sections and all sorts of parts, and they would just fix bits as they fixed it. So just you get a bit of a mix.
Steve Childers, just trying to catch up where I was. Train Freak says I use HO code 100 for main lines and yard, and code 83 for his industry areas.
Yeah, that makes sense. On the lighter rail that still exists.
Yeah. Code 00100 code as runs old stuff. Yeah, keep fine tracks code 40 for N gauge.
That's it. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name, but that's it. And I believe it now comes ready built, but it was all to be hand built. They had like a fret of sleepers, and then you have jigs for doing your points, and you'd build it yourself. Which actually is a side note. I've decided to cut you off, Jason.
No, you're all right. No.
When you're laying your model railway, the biggest problem a lot of people have, and I know you've had this with Barnabas Junction in some areas with point work. Points in the real world are all built to suit the curve or the position where they have to be. But on a model, we all go, for example, we all go to Pico, or we all go to Atlas, or we all go to Fleischmann, and we buy our track. And the geometry of all the point work and the crossovers, this sort of thing, is predetermined. So you have to build your layout to suit their track panels. And the issue you'll have is you'll have a long sweeping curve, and in the middle of it, you're going to have a fourth radius point. But it won't fit smoothly. And so the way around it is you can buy Pico Flexi track, build your own points.
And I had a chat with a guy actually at Stafford about point work. He was there demonstrating about making his own points. He was actually making a set of points, and I watched him. And although it might look very, very technical, he said to me, he says, that looked difficult, didn't it? And I went, yeah. He went, no, it's not. Yeah. When you set your mind to it and you know what you're doing, it's like riding a bike. Dead easy.
I'm name check a friend of mine, Chris, who isn't on the internet. He doesn't use YouTube or any sort of social media. He's on Facebook, but only doesn't really use it much. He hand builds all of his track. I spent years sitting next to him watching him build track. And here's a little tip for everybody. Some of his hand-built track is some of the finest I've seen. He does hand-built track for layouts and for clubs and societies and groups, and it's wonderful. And he doesn't pay a penny for his sleepers because they're all Costa coffee stirrers, all the coffee brands available. Every single one. Because what he did was he went into his local coffee store, and they'd bought all the wooden stirrers, and they'd got some that were too short to fit in their pots where you reach in and take a stirrer out. So he said, what are you doing with them? And they went, oh, we're going to throw them away. He said, can I have them? And he's got bundles of them. And he just cuts them to the correct spacing, and the longer ones for points, because obviously in point work, you have long sleepers and short sleepers together. Yep. And he uses them on the paper templates for where they need to sit. And then it's lost wax casting chairs, fit the rail.
Ultimately, the best form of scratch building you could probably imagine that. Scratch building your own point work, scratch building your own rails.
Yep, and at the end of the day, wooden sleepers, if you want to make wooden sleepers, use real wood. Doesn't look much better than that. So there's a good one for you. If you want to practice your track building at home, get some coffee stirrers and start there.
I think we're blagging the container man's head. He's saying scale, gauge, and code. These are too many technical terms for me.
Sorry.
There's a gilpin. What about track sleeper size and spacing? Pico and track doesn't seem to correct on any country. No, it doesn't matter. But like I say, any spacing is real. Doesn't matter. It's close, narrow, far apart. It's real. As long as it's not miles apart, there's a big gap, then start worrying.
Yeah, this is the thing. Actually, a good example for people who are modelling preservation railways, because it is a popular thing to do. Model a preserved railway. You can run anything you like. Many of them actually mix their sleeper types and alternate them. So if you really want to do very precise hand-built track or respacing your sleepers and so forth, a personal favourite of mine is the Great Central down at Loughborough, the southern section. If you stand on the platform there and look down at the track, the concrete sleepers are two distinct variants that are alternated every other one. And they're different shapes. So when you're doing a model like that, you could spend the time if you wanted to and combine the sleepers together, which looks a bit weird when you have a short section. When you do a long length, it becomes right. And it is right because there's a prototype for it right there. And many preserve lines do this. They get sleepers in and they'll mix them up.
Ray Barbo saying he's got to run, folks. Have a good rest of the day. Good, thanks for joining us, Ray. Appreciate it. Just going back to the chat, CSX Rensville. So code 70 is used in America. Pico have started to produce it, but Micro Engineering do it in America already.
Okay.
Container Man, when can I talk about trucks? Well, this is the guy to talk about trucks, actually. Hey, so yeah, get in touch with James. I'm sure. In fact, James, you need to check out Container Man's channel if you've not subscribed.
I'm going to. When we're done here, I am going to have a look.
I do like watching. It's very therapeutic watching Container Man's channel and watching him. He's doing his truck driving around the States.
I do that all day. Not in America, obviously.
Yeah, but this guy, he drives all day, every single day, from one side of the country to the other. He gets around many of the states. All you blokes think I'm talking about truck frames for train cars when I'm really talking about the big rigs. Trevor Dickinson, code 70 rail flat bottom made by Pico. Finnerton Central says he's been looking at the sleepers at Shrewsbury. When I was there, they were a mess. They were very old, very close together, and a lot of it, because obviously Shrewsbury is a big interchange station.
Yes.
So you'd see a lot of the sleepers, super long sleepers, between all that gigantic point work. So it does take some work to replace them. Simon's Trains saying Kit Kat sleepers for the plastic ones.
Yeah, that's the only thing to describe that basic sort of block shape.
I think you've just given them their worldwide name now, the Kit Kat sleeper.
If that becomes a thing, I'm sorry, everybody. I didn't mean to do that.
Container Man saying sleepers, ties.
Yes, if you're in America, right, okay, let's get this one thing. In America, they had 15 different track gauges before they were standardized, and they still got 15 different track gauges. So the Americans can call them whatever they like, but they're wrong, because we invented railways in Britain, and they're called sleepers. We're not going to count the thing that the Chinese came up with, whether it was 3,500 years ago, which wasn't self-propelled. No, it wasn't Chinese, it was the Egyptians, so I tell a lie. But yes, we invented railways. And we call them sleepers. So there.
Train Freak saying, I did see a comment from him earlier saying he's freelance. In other words, rule 1 applies. Yeah, anything goes. Freelance to him is everything is right. Arch West Junction saying the Festiniog Railway are currently replacing sleepers with plastic ones.
I've just had a thought on that freelance. A little thing. We build fictional locations. We build fictional buildings. We come up with fictional businesses. We come up with complete fictional worlds. We create fictional counties, fictional countries, even at times, roughly. But we don't build our own engines and wagons and rolling stock. We don't actually create our own fictional stock.
We always go with what's readily available.
We always put the real historical stuff in with our little fiction. Does anybody out there actually build freelance their own, locomotives and wagons? I wonder, with their own liveries and other bits as well. I just had that thought came to me. I wonder if anybody does that.
Interesting thought. If anyone else, either comment down below after the stream is finished. If you obviously they're not in the live chat, or get in. It's that over there. It's the other side of James, actually, in the main chat.
That way. There we go. Oh, I see a couple of people do.
Yes, my layout is 100% freelance. The locos, the rolling stock, are 100% prototypical. Finniston Central. Wellington Station is like that. Concrete in the centre lines and wooden on the platforms.
There you go.
Train Freak, code 83 is mainline, code 70 is industry, code 55 less travelled on. Members of early UK eras ignore FB rail, yet lines in the UK were using FB rail in the 1860s.
Flat bottom rail, yes.
Yeah.
As opposed to bullhead, which was more popular at the time.
Yeah. Rensville saying Bala Lake Railway uses rubber sleepers.
Oh, there you go. Didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, rubber sleepers, in theory, that is the ultimate lifelong sleeper.
No, rubber perishes over time. It goes white and cracks.
But wouldn't the plastic vibrate? That would degrade faster.
I don't know on that one. I know that rubber does degrade. This is why older people have children later in life by mistake.
Contain. I have one that will derail on code 83 turnouts because the wheel flanges are too tall. And that's like I say, going back to the older stock. Wheels are bigger, the flanges were deeper to ensure, because obviously the track was thicker or taller, whatever it is.
But also Pico changed their track.
That's right.
The newer Pico points, even their basic Code 100 train set points, I shall call them, are finer. The check rails are closer to the stock rail, and the drop over the frog, or the toe of the point, is reduced. And so like a Hornby Class 58, the old ones will not go over new Pico points, Code 100, but the old stuff, they fly through it.
Interesting subject actually there, mentioning Lima. Now, Lima is obviously, it's owned now by Hornby, but Hornby took them over. But Lima were their own company themselves.
Yeah.
An Italian company, so the European, operated under the European scale and gauges.
Yes.
Because Lima produced their own track as well, didn't they?
I believe they did, yes.
And it's not the same as British standard 4mm double O gauge, code 100. Although a lot of people will mistake it as the same track. It's not.
I didn't know that.
I have got, and I know I know Brian, if he's still got hold of it, I know he's got some examples of that. I know Stuart Valley Brook, he's got some good examples he could show you of that. And I know I have, but with all this move around, it's actually buried. So I can't get the track box. And I would dig that out. But see, the Lima track, it's actually bigger. The depth of the track must be about 1 millimeter.
All right.
Height. A little bit slight. It's 1 millimeter taller than code 100 track.
That's 3 inches in the real world.
But the rail width is the same. The height of the rail height is about 1 millimeter higher. So if some of you are out there, you've got your code 100 track and you've got this other piece of track.
Yeah.
Check what it says on the bottom. If it says Lima, bin it. Because it will not be any good for your model railway if you're focusing on your rolling stock of UK origin. Because it will not like it. It will run. If you did your whole layout in Lima track, it would be fine. But you'll find it hard to come by because it's really old track right now.
There is another way. Put a shim underneath your code 100 and bring it up to level. Yeah,
in fact... and it's just jumped up. The train freak has just said Lima track is more like code 110. So there you go. It's just fractionally out. So when you get the next opportunity and you get your hands on a piece of Lima track, check it up against your standard Pico 1 or code 100.
A little thought actually, which might be coming useful next year for many modelers who are watching this. Lima was made in Italy. Hence on the bottom of it says Lima, Italy. In Italy, they paint all of their railways white. All the rail is painted white. And we've started doing that in this country, but only on point work, not on every bit of track.
Now, before you say what it is,
Yeah, go on.
Let the guys in the comments, why have they started painting rails white? Or why in Italy do they paint their rails white? And why they've just started doing it here in the UK? Let's just leave that one there, and I'll come back to the comments, and we'll just read through a few more, and we'll see if we can get a few answers. Just give us a shout as we read through if you see anything coming up. Ronald points aren't much different in the UK to US, all down to who designed the points. Scrapline says that Exeter St David's in 90s was very much a mix-up of all different types of track. Trace Gates, no, you aren't going to anything wrong with your layout. It's absolutely fine. Andy Bennett of AKA Head Bumps. Jason, have you heard the latest developments of building the ELR? Yes, I have. And there will be more coming from me and MRYCG on that news to come in a very near future. So that's just something to stay posted with the MRYCG team. To tell you, the train fleet, James DMU. So you want to discuss Lego trains? Scale, yeah, laugh out loud. So go on then. Let's have a quick discussion on Lego.
Right, Lego is really interesting because for DMU, the society I'm a member of, which is why I use that in my name, because it's so people could find me when they ask me a question. I'll make a video on how to do stuff. That aside, we have a display of guards vans which go from T gauge, the 1/450th one, which is scratch built, it's tiny, all the way up to gauge 3 inch. And there's a couple of missing ones. One of the missing ones is actually Lego, and I am working on building one upstairs right now. I have lots of Lego bits, and I've been building myself a London Northeastern pattern 20-ton end vestibule guard van. And the problem is with Lego, you can be 5 bricks wide, I think 6 and 7 bricks wide. Some people like to do 8 bricks wide, and this obviously affects the physical size of the body of what you're building, which also then technically adjusts the track gauge. So Lego gauge doesn't really exist. It's all about scale. It's how you scale them, because some people build them scaled approximately to the real world, as near as you can, because of using Lego bricks, and others scale them to the minifigures that you put in them, and they're built purely to fit the minifigs as opposed to fit in with sort of almost scale scenery, but it's brilliant stuff. Great, because if you think about it, you've got a Hornby train set. If you wanted to change everything, you have to buy some new stuff. You've got a Lego train set, you want to change it, you take it apart and rebuild it. It's great.
Yeah. Simon's Train saying, I'm not sorry for calling them Kit Kat sleepers.
That's okay.
That's what we'll call them Kit Kat sleepers from now on, as the plastic sleepers.
There you go. I'm trying to say hello to Neil. I've just seen him commenting in the chat there. It's Radford Junction. Anybody doesn't know.
Finlayton Central saying to all the over the ponders, ties go round your neck.
Correct.
Building the LR step by step. Hi, better late than never. Hope everyone's okay. Welcome, building the LR. Welcome to tonight's stream. Thanks for coming. I will be in touch with you again very soon. Sorry, container man. Oh, he's apologising to him. Nathan Delay does out of a soda pop cans. Oh, right, yeah, he does. You were on about people that make their own rolling stock trains. Check out Nathan Delay. He actually makes his own trains.
Right.
I think he uses the chassis of 009, but he makes his own bodies and his own trucks for his own railway out of things like cans, pop cans. He'll get one of them and he'll turn that into a train. It's
a great building material. Actually, that's a little thing there. If you hold that can you've got there, there's an interesting piece on that, which is really useful. If you just turn it, is it empty before we just turn it upside down? Right, make a mess. The bottom of the can, please. If you look at the bottom of the can, that little bit of metal right there in the middle is really useful if you've got Hornby TEA tanks or you want to build your own tanks, because it's exactly the right shape and size. Gets rid of that horrible split down the middle of them.
Oh, so take that off.
Cut the bottom of the can off. Yeah. Clean up the inside of the ring, and you can use them to make tanks.
Interesting little tip there from DEMU.
I got that from Robin, who's scratch building in 3mm, and he uses the centre of it to go on the ends to make tanks. There you go.
Good stuff.
I won't take credit for it. It wasn't my idea.
Just catching up with the chat now. We have had some messages on there saying about the white rail, so we'll come on to that in a second. Now, rubber sleepers would work and not deteriorate if they were treated. Could be made from recycled car tires. Yeah, there's a lot of car tires that need recycling. It's a good way of recycle. What is it? It's not called recycle. It's called some I can't remember what the word is now. I'm sure many of us. Sorry.
It'll come to you later. It always does, that sort of thing.
Well, we're going to get on now. So, we asked about why do the railway industries in Italy paint the rails white, and as James had said, they're starting to do here in the UK. The first person to get in the chat was building the ELR, and he said for heat reflection.
Yeah, that's it.
And totally correct. Well done, building the ELR. You were right. As well as Simon's trains attracts less heat. So yeah. Route 7 Railway. He chose this thought. He thought this is why. Shows cracks and damage up better.
I suppose it might do, but normally with cracks in a rail, they are almost microscopic. They're like hairline fracture, so that's why they use scanning machines now to find them. But it's not a bad shout actually. It's a good theory. I'll go with that. It's not right, but it's
Growler said to protect from the heat. Donegal Dad also heat reflects heat. So yes, that is why they paint rails white, because obviously they're in European countries. It's Italy. It's primarily hotter country than anything like here in the UK, but with climate and all that lot, weather's getting hotter here in the UK over the decades. We're experiencing hotter weather. The rails are being affected, so they're now experiencing. Donegal Dad saying hi to Chris. To now introduce painting the rails white here. Now you mentioned that's only on point work.
In the UK, yes. The reason I brought it up was we have problems with expansion of the rails with the model and this sort of thing. Has anybody tried painting their track white yet to see if it helps with expansion in bad weather or hot weather?
I can say I have, but completely by accident.
Right.
It was actually a section of track work. It's still over there to this day, where it rusted because it's actually an old steel piece of track that I left in. But I left it in purposely because it kind of self-weathered to a nice state, and it's got white edging down the inner edge of the track. And I think you have, when you visited here yourself several weeks ago, you spotted that particular section, if you remember rightly. And you said, did you weather that? I went, no, it's done it itself. Ballasted the track. And you were like, really? So that, I could say I'm with the prototypical.
You've had a go.
Right. So the guys are just commenting on the word I was not thinking of. And two people have said two things, which I meant both of them. Repurpose. Upcycle. Upcycle was the one I was thinking of. But repurpose.
Isn't that pedaling uphill?
Upcycle is upcycling is recycling something that's recyclable.
Got you.
Or recycling something that's been recycled, that's been recycled, that's been recycled.
Hand me down. That's what we used to call it.
Yeah, hand me down. What colour will they paint the rails in winter when it's too cold?
That's a good question. I was just thinking with the whole hand-me-down recycling thing. In our family, we were quite poor, and our clothes were handed down all the way through the family. And me being the youngest, I was the only 3-star general at school.
Chris of Hales Heritage Railway said, I thought it was because they ran out of rust-coloured paint.
Could have been. Not enough rail match, I know.
No, run out of rail match. Why paint model track white unless you're going to put a halogen lamp up against it? No sunlight in most model railway rooms.
It's not about the direct light, it's about the humidity.
So
you can have yeah, you can have a loft space, a roof space, or a shed with no windows at all, and it'll still become very humid and very warm. And that physical heat is what causes the expansion of the metal. And that's where you get the rail meets and then does this. It has to move out. And obviously, the theory is you stop the heat from getting into the material. So in theory, it doesn't matter whether it's direct sunlight or not. It's the physically repelling the heat from what's there. But it's a fair point, though. If it's not in direct sunlight, would it matter?
Finniston Central's just put a comment there. I presume that's referring to Only Fools and Horses. And that is, Jason, you could paint it a luminous yellow.
You could, yeah.
Yeah, if those of you who know your Only Fools and Horses, you'll know exactly what that's.
So you can see it in tunnels.
Somerset Andy's no white rails over Westbury this evening. Train Freak, mine is in a garage, and I'm in South Central US. It is very humid. I have to keep a fan blowing 24/7 to help keep the humidity down across his layout.
This is something I noticed when I went to America. Most American homes seem to be built with air conditioning and double glazing, this sort of thing. So they are climate controlled. So I suppose it must be easier for them to actually over there to maintain a constant temperature with a layout in the house and not have the issues. Because over here, obviously, our houses were not built with that in mind at all.
No.
Most of us are actually still trying to get insulation to keep the cold out, never mind keep the warm away. If anything, we want the warm in. But no, it's interesting actually. Yeah, you have that sort of opposite problem over there, and then we just have to contend with whatever's thrown at us.
Indeed. Right. Well, any final questions then, please? Any guys have got for James, either about scale, gauge, code, or even anything in the modeling world, because he's not just well knowledgeable on the scale and gauge code and all that. Like, he's very knowledgeable on a wide variety of stuff, and it does come as beneficial as he is a DEMU, Diesel Electric Members United.
Modelers United, close enough.
Modelers United, Members United. Sorry,
there's many of us, to be fair. There's many. Not just
so yeah, any final questions before we say good night to James? I'll just wait for anything to pop up. Or
while they're thinking of something to say, my 3 notes I made while you were introducing your changes to your layout. You're going to level your baseboard.
Yeah.
Why? The real world is not built on a snooker table, and if you look along any section of railway, it does undulate. So having a little bit of movement isn't always a bad thing. So
it is when it's kind of like that.
Oh, okay, I'll give you that.
I'll just say 3 little tiny letters. MDF.
Oh, lovely. In the B1N.
Yes, that's it. It was jigsawed together. I'll take a pic. I think you've seen some pictures yourself already, but you can see it's lots and lots of little pieces of wood that I altered together with other little pieces of wood, and then laid them across some wooden pine shelf brackets, which were only held on by 1 screw across there on each one. There was 3 of them. So you got to think there's a lot of weight that's now building. When I initially put it on, it was only 12 inches wide. That stretch was.
If you're telling your wife that's 12 inches, this is why she can't parallel park.
I extended that to 18. So it increased the weight on the same old structure, and I increased the weight of it. I increased the size of the board with more cut-offs. So it was more jigsaw pieces put together. So it ended up just being all over the place. I'm thinking, sod that, it's causing me too much headaches. I ripped a lot out, put a nice bit of framework in, nice bit of level board. It won't be completely flat, because that end of the layout is actually ½ an inch lower than that end of the layout.
Nice gentle
so
grade.
It will be a slope.
Yeah, that'll be all right.
So it won't be all perfectly level, but It'll be better than like that. It was.
Okay.
I would say it suffered the Everard effect.
Well, yeah. Back to Everard. You've neatly linked me in there to the next thing, which was track ballast removal. If you've used we'll call it the traditional method of wet the track with warm water because it flows a bit better, or an IPA alcohol mix in there, and then apply the 50/50 PVA mix and let it dry. If you simply spray the track with water, it will reactivate the PVA. You can scrape under the rail, lift it off. The ballast is now wet and lumpy, which is horrible, but it will go back and dry again. You can actually reuse it. And you can remove the track with very little effort at all. You don't have to bang anything or mess about with anything. You can just damp it and brush it off, which saves a bit of aggravation. Also, if you're using PVA and the ballast, you don't have to use track pins at all.
Yeah.
So again, it makes it easier to move and remove the track.
Yeah, initially, why I do around all the layout, as I'll pin it down initially.
Yeah.
Ballast it, glue it, so it's set, and then I remove the track pins.
That's it. Yeah, nice and easy.
So
and bridges is a horribly complicated subject, which if you go down that little rabbit hole, good luck.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's not going to be super posh bridge. It's just going to be something slapped together, scratch built. We'll see how it turns out.
You'll be fine.
Right.
Fine.
So just having a look. Oh, Westall Wagonworks is in the house. You should get that finished in 2 weeks, Jason. I'm hoping to get it finished by next weekend. Ooh. So not 2 weeks, next weekend. I'm hoping to get it finished super quick and to get the track back down. Because as it stands at the moment, I have not got any operational lines on this layout at the moment. It's a Westall Wagonworks layout at the moment.
Oh, gauntlet thrown down there. I can actually tell you officially, I have seen Westall Wagonworks recently, and it is working and running.
I believe so.
It's okay. He's got you.
He's not destroyed it then.
Well, he keeps trying.
It's not a shelf anymore.
Oh no, it's still a shelf.
Bit of a. Oh, it's a good, interesting question. Actually, it comes from someone saying, "Do you put cork under your track?" No, I don't. I put laminate flooring underlay underneath mine.
Oh, that's a good shout.
Because it's sound absorbing. It's 6 mil thick. And looks like coal or ballast kind of thing. I'll just rip a piece off because I've chucked it all away, actually. All the bits I've got. Oh no!
While you're digging that up,
I've got some,
the problem with cork underlay is cork in itself is a natural element, a natural thing. It degrades, and after a period of time, it will break up, and you will find yourself having to replace the cork in much the same way you get with the Pico foam ballast underlay. That again will break down over time, and the theory is it'll deaden the sound. But if you put a track pin through it, you've removed the sound deadening qualities. You've got to glue it, not pin it. So buying cork sheets, no matter how cheap, is a complete waste of money and time. If you're going to raise up the track to do ballast shoulders, exactly what you just said, get something else, and that sort of laminate is ideal.
This is laminate flooring underlay.
That's brilliant.
And I say
that won't degrade.
No, this stuff, it's like the day I bought it. It's 6 mil thick. I paid $12.99 delivered for a huge 12. No, it wasn't. $12.99 delivered for a 22-meter roll.
That's enough.
And that whole roll, I completely, instead of just going under the track, I covered the entire board.
Fair enough.
To give a complete sound deadening on the wood, regardless of what was on it. And I also, so I did the entire board section all the way around. I also did the upper level with it, and I did my end brick wall, which is behind the camera.
Ah, right.
Soundproofed the loft with it as well, and I still had some left over. So it went a long way. Now, the reason why obviously I went with it, and I said it looks like the color of it.
Oh yeah,
you can actually see where the track's been on it. It's like left effect. It looks like the foam underlay you get, and PVA sticks to this really well.
Yeah,
but as you've seen with the chunks of track I did, if you just get something and it'll slide under, it will release without issue, and it does dramatically reduce the sound.
There's your top tip.
Yeah, 6 mil. You can get them in different depths, but I chose 6 mil to give a good firm sponge on the bed. But I think it actually worked out the best value for money, even though it is one of the bigger ones. But yeah, 6 mil. Once the track's on it, you pin it down, ballast it, glue it, take your track pins out. You've got really, really sound reducing underlay.
Oh, brilliant.
And because it comes in sheets, you can still cut it to your track. Obviously, that's a piece there. I've just an odd piece. I've cut it to a radius of a bit of a bend. It's just a bit of an offcut. So really good stuff. And I got it from Fleabay. So $12.99 delivered within a few days.
I want to look it up.
I keep that link stored because it's a cracking product. And there's certain areas on the layout actually that aren't ballasted, but at a distance you think it was. Yeah. Because it blends in with the colour of the ballast. So it's a good thing. Right. So
brilliant.
Thank you very much for joining me this evening, James. Thank you very much for your information and invaluable advice on scale, gauges.
I called it. But no, thank you for having me. Genuinely, it's
just quickly running through, and I'll come back onto the chat in a minute. So I'm going to, because we're going to be bringing the show to an end. We're getting up to the 2-hour mark now. I've got one last final shout out to do before we bring the show to an end. So again, many thanks to James for joining us, and we'll hopefully, maybe we'll see you again very soon.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I've just seen one comment which I must answer, and I've just lost it because I scrolled down. I apologise. It says from Simon Trains. How did it feel smashing that warship? Brilliant.
I know what you're on about there. So yes, and I've just seen something from Dave actually, and I'll come back to that one in a moment. Mr. Cork, no, not Mr. Cork. What thickness is in the underlay? 6 mil. That's SimOD. Still have to be able to get a model of ballast shoulder, and then you can still do that with that. So you can get it in different depths. Very good tip. I know someone else that likes to have some nice tips. Nice to know you're still. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Dave. Thanks, Dave.
Very interesting, James. Night all stay safe. Andrew Class 374. Not going just yet. We've got another shout out to go. Timber Surf pins can pull sleeper down. Yes, just on that note, actually, because of the depth of that foam, I don't use trap pins. I use panel pins.
Yes.
They are. Well, I haven't a clue what size they are. To be honest, I think they're 15 mil.
What scale is that?
But they are.
They're about 4.5 foot high. That's a big pin.
Trying to find. There we go. Has that got a hole in it? Yeah. So the reason why I chose these particular ones is these will actually fit in to your holes that are already into any set track. Pre-drilled holes in your sleepers, and also if you had to make holes, it won't split your sleeper. And as I can't think who it was now, someone mentioned about Timber, about if you knock them in, about pulling the sleeper down into this foam.
It can do,
yes, but because of the length of this panel pin, there's plenty to go through through the foam and still reach your board underneath.
So, two thoughts on that, if I may. I know we're sort of wrapping up. In 7mm O gauge, it has been well documented that you actually pin the outside of the sleeper, not the middle of the sleeper.
Yes.
So the rail won't do that; it'll actually do that.
Yes.
But it's more gentle, so I'm exaggerating with that, but that's an easier one. And the other one is something I picked up years ago, and when Tinsley was completely relayed and ballasted, it was all held down with drawing pins. Because you put the drawing pin in between the sleepers, the pin head holds two sleepers evenly, and you can actually wiggle the track back and forward with the pin in between them. So any adjustments you want to make before ballasting. And then once it's ballasted, you pull the drawing pins out, it leaves one sleeper spacing with no ballast, but then you go around afterwards and just fill them in.
Yeah.
So there's a little
silicone to hold the track down. It gives you time to fudge it around if you're working on a curve. Yeah, that's a good idea. And also you can come back 10 minutes later and it can pull it up and move it again if it's not right, and still sticky enough to hold it until you get round to ballasting. A good idea, that, but very smelly silicone.
There is that, I suppose. Yes.
Yeah. Well ventilated area. So yeah, thank you very much. Then wrap it up. Then thanks very much, James, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone that's been.
Already, then check out James's channel, James DAMU channel on YouTube. Great inspiration into your scratch building and your prototypically correct scale model.
It's not. It's nonsense.
When he gets it right.
Actually, that's one last little thing for anyone that's really bothered about prototypical stuff and the modelling. The liveries of the stock you run, the model makers, Backman and Hornby, are very good at this. They will bring out a model that looks really nice. And if you research the livery and number applied, you'll sometimes find it wasn't carried for more than only a few weeks.
Yeah.
Look up the models you've got and just see what actually should run where and when, because sometimes there's only a very small window of time when they actually existed. For people who are really bothered about that element of accuracy with the model making. Otherwise, rule 1 applies and it's just easier.
One final touch then on for James, taking us to the podcast. If you like your disaster diaries in the MRYCG podcast, this is your man.
Don't blame me. As Jan would say, I was only driving the speedboat.
And for those who do like the disaster diaries, the next episode is going to be an American episode. It's going to be Maryland over in the States. So make sure you tune into the MRYCG podcast. Thank you very much then, James.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Down into the basement. Stay with me until I've brought the show to end. It'll be about 5-10 minutes. I'll have a quick chat with you off screen very shortly.
Magic. Thank you, everyone.
Bye for now.
See you, mate.
Right, so thank you very much to James for joining us. All about scale, gauge, and a bit into the coding of the track from all areas around the country. I hope it's been informative for you. It certainly has for me. I've learned a thing or two from it all, as well as have some information from you guys here in the chat area. Well, we do have one final shout out to do for the final part of the show. I know we're running now over to the 2-hour mark. And third and final shout out for this evening is a channel with 251 subscribers. Now, I feel this channel does need to get a lot more interest from you modelers out there and get subscribing to it to show you a bit of support for the channel. And that's Colchester International Double O Gauge Model Railway. Now, if one of my moderators would like to grab the link from YouTube and drop it in the chat for me, that'd be highly appreciated. So let me get a bit of an out. We have a ginormous about section. So the main focus is to document the building of the Colchester International Double O Gauge Model Railway, which started back in 2014, and through various setbacks is now getting back on schedule again. There will always be an update video added each time major work on the layout is completed, so please pop back to see the new films once they are uploaded. Excuse me, thank you very much there. The wife just posted the link in. Help and encourage everyone in the hobby, along with running group along with running group events, challenges, regular face-to-face meetings. So we're proud to be a support of model railway clubs wherever we are. So yeah, go check it out. Colchester International. He does need some subscribers. Highly, there we go. Thank you very much. It's just appeared on my screen. Does like his Virgin Trains. He does a lot into modelling of vehicles as well, and he does a lot of out and about as well. Transport Fever 2, the new map. He's talking about games as well. Lots of information, lots of informative modelling for you to check out. He also looks at some of the Oxford diecast vehicles, and he does like his Virgin Trains, and he does have some fantastic high roadway modeling. Some of that I recommend you go check it out. He does like his OHA, overhead electrics. Do check that out as well. So let me. Oh, I've got to come off it now. Colchester. Let me go back to it one moment. Where was I? Get back to it. There it is. So he's jumped up already 260 subscribers. Thank you very much. And make sure, obviously, if you're watching this back on a replay, then check it out. Keep an eye on the chat if you're just watching the film, the video. And also, if you've got anything, comments, anything you want to say, anything further on after the live stream, make sure you comment below. All information from the channel memberships up to tonight are linked or in the channel description below, as well as other ways you can find myself, for the YouTube Tuesday shows, and other ways you can follow Barnabas Junction on social media, as well as the MRYCG. And talking about the MRYCG, we've just released episode 6 of the MRYCG Off the Rails podcast. That was launched last Sunday. Great podcast, and I actually was interviewed for it, which was a bit nerve-wracking considering I've been interviewing everybody else prior to that. So if you haven't already, check out the MRYCG YouTube channel as well, where you'll find the podcast is premiered at 2 p.m. on the first Sunday of the month. But we've got some interesting news coming on that podcast very soon. Make sure you stay with that podcast for the remaining part of the year. Next episode is going to be Over the Pond Takeover, followed by the following episode will be on December the 6th, which will be episode 8. More information coming up on that as we go along throughout the remainder of 2020. And one thing I will say is, will we be saying goodbye to 2020 from Off the Rails? Stay with on that. So thank you very much to everybody that's watched here today. It's been absolutely great to you. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you've been informed some great information about scale, gauge, and maybe a few of your questions have been successfully answered. I hope so, from myself, and obviously I talked from James as well. Thank you very much for everybody that's joined us today. Thank you everybody that's also come on board as new channel members and to support the channel and to help me raise some donations towards future prizes. Don't forget, we have the competition which was launched last week here on episode 1 of series 3. If you haven't yet, get yourself back over to episode 1 of series 3 and check out how you enter and get entering in the comments. The draw will be drawn, sorry, the competition, the prizes will be drawn here on episode 4 on the 20th of October. So get your entry in now. It will close, the entries close at 1 p.m. on that same day, the 20th of October. So get your entry in quick. Any entries after the 1 p.m. deadline will not be counted, I'm afraid. So get your entry in quick. Thank you to all those that have already entered. You are definitely in the draw. So that's it for this week. I'm going to get cracking with this bad lot behind me to get the trains running again. Thank you all also for being here. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I've done, and as much as probably James has done as well. So until next week, take care everyone, stay safe, stay well, and mostly all, keep on modeling. Bye for now, take care.